Welcome back to another episode of the Road to Resilience podcast, the place where we explore the people, ideas, and lived experiences that help our communities withstand, adapt, and recover from life's toughest moments. I'm your co host, John Ray. I'm the founder of Florida Resilience Group consulting firm and the current emergency manager for the city of Fort Worth, Texas. As always, I'm joined by my esteemed co host, Ashley Harrigan. Ashley is the director of Fairwinds Resilience Consulting Firm. As a reminder, please like and subscribe to the Road to Resilience podcast if you enjoy our content. In today's episode, we're proud to recognize Women's History Month, and today's conversation highlights something that often goes unseen in disaster and crisis recovery, and that is the emotional and psychological work that happens after the sirens fade. When the cameras leave and the response phase ends, communities are still healing. Families are rebuilding, people are processing trauma, and very often it's women who are quietly carrying the weight of helping communities move forward. That reality informs this episode that we have titled After the Sirens, How Women Carry Community Recovery. Today, we're going to talk about the role women play in recovery, the importance of mental health and resilience, and how creating safe spaces for healing can strengthen entire communities. So whether you're a leader, a first responder, a parent, or someone simply trying to navigate the challenges of everyday life, this conversation reminds us of the importance of mental health and our community's resilience and how the professionals in that space, like our guest today, are helping others heal. So without further ado, Ashley, let's get into it.
Thanks, John. Today's episode is one that I'm really excited about. It's Women's History Month, and I get to sit down with someone who has shaped my own understanding of resilience and community and emotional safety. My best friend of over 2 decades. It's also fitting that we met at Spelman, an all women's HBCU with the motto Women Who Serve. So before we jump in, I would love to tell you a little bit about Sybil. One, because she's too humble to list her stats, but her work truly sits at the intersection of everything we're talking about. Sybil is a therapist who is based in New York. She's worked with communities recovering from major disasters, including Hurricane Sandy, and she brings this incredibly grounded understanding of what emotional recovery actually looks like long after the headlines fade. She is also the founder of the Calming Suite, a space that's created to help people access emotional wellness, community care, and tools for healing in a world that feels increasingly overwhelming. And on top of that, she's a mother, a community builder, and someone who deeply understands the invisible labor that women carry, which is the caregiving, the emotional load, and the quiet leadership that holds families and neighborhoods together. So, when we talk about women as the hidden infrastructure of resilience, Sybil really lives that work every day. And I'm honored that she has time to still take my calls and be on the show today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to speak with both of you today.
Let's start with the foundation. We ask everyone who comes on the show to define resilience. Just it always helps to ground the conversation, ground the audience in our sort of themes that we'll be touching on. So I have to ask you. When you think about resilience, especially from the mental and emotional health perspective, how do you define it?
Well, I could give you the Webster's definition, which speaks more to the speed of recovery. But I think specifically how I would make it personalized in my own is the perseverance in the face of adversity. So when I think of resilience, I think about how one perseveres in the face of things that are adverse conditions, adverse feelings, and how an individual adjusts to their new shape and their new normal.
Yeah, I love that. I love that definition, Sybil. I mean, there's so many layers to resilience, and every podcast, we ask that question, and we always get, you know, almost the same answer, but a little bit different. But there's always a new layer to pull back, and I like the way you frame that. So, Sybil, one thing that stood out to me in the research is that women are more likely than men to experience depression and PTSD after disasters. So that's a huge emotional burden to carry. From your perspective as a therapist, what does returning to safety actually look like after trauma or instability?
It's a very good question. I like the point you made earlier about what happens when the cameras leave. Um, to me, a return to safety looks more like rebuilding emotionally. So when we think of safety, we often think of physical safety. Is my home okay? Do I have a place to live? Do I have clothes? Do I have food? Do I have the basic necessities? And we don't often think about have has our nervous system returned to safety. So when I think about safety after a trauma or instability, it really looks like, what is our nervous system doing? Is that recovered? A true return to safety starts within the nervous system for me, reminding your body of internal safety, which is not always easy as recovering material things. And I say easy in quotes because that's also not very easy, especially if you lose something as big as a home or there's destruction to large pieces of property. But internal safety is important as well. And sometimes those are the things that are harder to recover stability wise.
So, well, I love that answer because it makes me think that how do we not consider a nervous system as a necessity? Right?
Hmm.
Um, and not just victims in a disaster, but, because we've done the show and we've worked with plenty of first responders and in some cases been first responders, I think
Mm.
about your nervous system after responding to some of the crises and disasters that we talk about on this show. Because we often forget that first responders are also part of the communities that actually are impacted by a disaster too. So
Mhm.
an unregulated nervous system as you are doing a very stressful job and also navigating a disaster crisis of your own is so important. So, building on top of that, after Hurricane Katrina, we saw a lot of studies that showed that women experienced a major increase in psychological victimization, while men's rates didn't change or didn't change as drastically. When we talk about survival mode, speaking of the nervous system, and when we talk about survival mode versus healthy resilience, how do you distinguish the two? And why do you think women get stuck in survival mode so often?
That's actually a really good question. I think partially we may not notice that we're stuck in survival mode, but I'll kind of work backwards from your question. A lot of us are used to sur- surviving, to having to uh, carry on or keep calm and carry on, as they say. So I distinguish the two by this kind of point. Survival is neglecting your needs in order to prioritize the problem solving. So while survival is necessary in a lot of cases, their priority is on solving the issue at hand versus solving our needs or solving our unmet needs is a better way to put it. We've almost been conditioned as a society to deprioritize our emotional needs and sacrifice the productivity. So if there's a disaster, if there's a trauma happening, the immediate need is whatever's right in front of us. If it is housing, if it's shelter, those are the immediate needs, and we tend to deprioritize the feelings that come from those disasters or the instability of not having those basic needs. Healthy resilience looks like being able to balance both. Huge task at hand, but necessary. So, healthy resilience may look like quickly processing feelings. You don't always need 2 to 3 business days to cry, to feel your feelings, to let them out. Um, it may be more so a matter of what coping skills you have in the immediate to handle what's happening in the moment. Healthy resilience can be, I feel blank, I need blank. So I feel anxious, I need connection because of what's happening. And you may be able to get that connection in the moment very quickly. Um, survival mode has its place. Like I said, I think survival is important, and we've almost been taught to survive. However, we get stuck when our nervous system doesn't return it to safety, as we talked about earlier. When our nervous system doesn't have that reminder that we are out of the triggering incident, we get stuck in that. And healthy resilience doesn't exclude surviving, it's just focusing on the need of our nervous system so that we can move through the entire cycle. It's more response than reaction. So, survival mode is a reaction to what's happening. Healthy resilience looks like a response to what's happening.
Well, I love that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that as well. I mean, I know that question is it's complex. For me, it's really hard to kind of distinguish, between community recovery, emergency management, personal well-being. I mean, they all look similar on the surface, but
Mhm.
I guess they also both involve, kind of getting through adversity. But it's really the mindset, the sustainability and outcomes that are very different there. And I like the way Sybil kind of explained that. Another thing that jumped out at me, Sybil, is among mothers who survived hurricanes Katrina and Gustav, low social support was directly linked to worse mental health outcomes like
Mm.
anxiety and PTSD. What modern stressors are you seeing today that shape how people and communities cope? And how does disrupted support make recovery harder? I guess.
Mm. I think the main one that we see today is the response to COVID. Um, it's almost an invisible stressor at this point. It's something that happened that we have all been affected by, that we are living through, yet many people don't point to that as a stressor. And I think that is certainly one that is a modern stressor that we can kind of see in how people interact with community and what's happened after we've reopened, and the way that we interact with each other has changed. The residual effects are still being experienced by, I don't want to say all, but majority of us. We have been expected to move on and as normal, carry on as usual, but there's a new normal, and we have to understand that creating a new normal means that we as a society and as in our individual communities have to change how that looks. Add to that the uncertainty of the political climate, a 24-hour global news cycle. These are all things that are modern stressors, and they shape how we interact with each other. Um, I don't know, guys. Nothing has really been normal for a long time. Normal is subjective. We see the world change constantly in real time because, again, we have access to so much more than we used to. All of these are things that wear on our nervous system, can be stressors, and it's necessary to explore how to support each other in recovery when there is a bigger disaster, specifically with hurricanes, natural disasters. We saw the wildfires last year, um, and witnessing that impacts how we recover.
You know what? I think that's such a really good point. And your point about COVID and the sort of invisible stressors. I think I have seen, and I think we've probably talked about this a number of times on everyone's sort of collective eagerness and just acceptance of moving on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and where we see those lingering impacts, I think, is really in children. If
Mm-hmm.
you had school age children, there was a really stark difference between them doing virtual education, returning back to school, all of those different timelines, you can actually see that impact on children more than adults who are sort of ready to bury the trauma in their bodies and just move on. I think that's a really good point. Same thing with the 24-hour news cycle in the political climate, but also just our exposure to a lot of disasters and crises. And I think we've talked about that on the show too, John, where people are just seeing more disasters, more devastation, and the long-term sort of impact on you mentally by just seeing so much destruction every day on a constant beat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it feels like our new baseline because we are living in such a more connected world. It seems like our new baseline is that we are kind of in a steady state of crisis. It feels like if you turn on your TV or if you look at your phone or even just look out your door, it almost feels like that we are in a steady state of crisis.
Which means we never get to recovery.
No,
Absolutely.
That's right. Um, you know, well, one thing I really admire about your work is how intentionally you create emotional safety, whether it's in the therapy practice or your small groups work or just all of the work that you're doing at the Calming Suite. Um, can you talk a little bit more about how therapists help people rebuild that sense of safety after a crisis?
Absolutely. Rebuilding a sense of safety, especially after a crisis where support is disrupted, it's truly about building a safe space, but practical coping skills. Building a space where you can introduce and practice accessible and practical coping skills. First, identifying what feels unsafe. I think it's very important to distinguish between a tangible or physical threat versus a residual feeling of instability or feeling unsafe caused by an event. One is going to give you different tools than the other. So, first, distinguishing the difference between is there a physical, tangible threat to your safety that we need to plan and navigate around? Or is this a residual feeling from something that has happened in the past? From there, exploring and identifying what an individual used to survive said disruption or threat can help figure out how to move from that space to, again, the return to safety for the nervous system. I think there are things that I like to call pillars or anchors that every individual has in their life that make them feel safe. And in identifying those, that's one of the ways, specifically me and my therapeutic work, that I try to encourage or rebuild a sense of safety with my clients. So understanding what anchors or pillars you have and what anchors have you lost. Did you have a friend who maybe was a pillar of support for you and maybe you lost them to COVID? Okay. So we know friendship is a pillar for you. How can we grieve that friend while building another pillar of friendship? And that's just one example, but finding pillars of safety and building on them, essentially. The other part is, again, introducing those coping mechanisms. So, are you feeling anxious in your body? Can we do breathing exercises? Are you feeling disconnected from your body? Are there things that the feeling of unsafety is creating a sense of disconnection for you that we need to reconnect you and reground you? Because then we can do grounding exercises. When an individual is stuck in fight or flight or freeze or fawn, your nervous system essentially is unable to rest. So we have to identify what is activating it and what is going to deactivate it. Is there a real way to tap more into rest? Is there a real way to get you from the fight, fawn, freeze, or flight uh, to move to the next space so that you can actually rest and then you can continue to support your community and continue to fight through survival, continue to be resilient, but really unpacking the layers uh, of trauma that may have happened and moving through that to build healthy resilience.
yes, Sybil, I truly admire the work those in your space are doing to re-regulate the nervous system or to help folks re-regulate their nervous system, I guess would be a better way to frame that. There's so many people that kind of remain in stuck in like that fight or flight mode. I mean, coming from the military, I see folks every day, including myself, that have those issues, long after their service is over. And I just think that that has been an a point of concern, I think, across all of our communities, after the crisis is over, right?
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, we are kind of stuck in crisis mode because we see so much consistently.
And we always want to give people something they can use today, right? And this is something I
Mhm.
believe that we have done in our previous episodes, and that is we want to provide practical tools for our listeners. So, what are one or maybe two practical tools anyone listening can use to process stress or trauma in their everyday life?
Absolutely. A lot of coping, I think, gets the idea that you need to sit down for an hour with a journal, which is great. I don't knock journaling, love journaling down, but some practical tools are really honestly breathing. We don't often do the mindfulness practice of paying attention to the way that we breathe. And studies have shown that when we are in crisis mode or survival mode, we breathe differently than when we are at rest. So, taking a couple 1 to 2 minutes to focus on breathing and the way that we are breathing is a way to kind of release and process some of the feelings that we may feel stuck in our body. One is box breathing. It's a simple technique that helps calm your nervous system when you are at a point of high stress or anxiety. Another one is like five senses. And of course, depending on where you are with in your stress response, or what the activating event is, may determine which skill you might want to use. Five senses is something you could do practically anywhere. I've done it myself. I've done it on the train, rush hour in a crowded subway, where it just things were overwhelming on the subway at rush hour with three children, three small children, can be anxiety inducing. And it's more of a grounding exercise to navigate stress and anxiety. What you do is you look around, note five things that you see, four things that you can feel, three things that you can hear, two things that you can smell, and one thing you can taste. And that helps to not only calm your nervous system, but reconnect you to the moment. I also mentioned box breathing. It involves more slow, deep breaths, and you count them as you go. You're counting how long you inhale for. So if you're inhaling for 4, you exhale for 4, and you imagine yourself drawing a box with those breaths.
I love the idea of approaching breathing in like this strategic way to calm your nervous system and be able to check in with your body. But I will have to get you off recording to know what was the one thing that you could taste on the subway.
Luckily, I had candy in my purse. I keep candy or snacks in my bag, so I happened to be snacking at the time, so it might have been like a now and later.
That is very important, and, sometimes, when you're going through a crisis, sometimes you need to breathe and sometimes you just need to eat, so that's
Yes.
Well,
that's a good one.
Ashley, I think if you're on the subway in New York, particularly, you probably want to hold your breath and not open your mouth. But anyway,
That's a
Holding your
fact,
br
John.
holding your breath is also a form of breathing, restricting.
right.
Um, so I know I have seen research that women tend to take disaster risks more seriously than men. There have even been some really interesting studies around when storms are named after women versus men and what the public perception is. So all of this sort of gendered stuff goes into the planning and recovery phases too. And then, sort of adding another layer, I've seen studies where Black women in particular often report higher levels of post traumatic growth. So, deeper appreciation of life, stronger relationships, more compassion after a disaster. So, I want to ask you, Where do you see women quietly carrying community resilience and some of that rebuilding and recovery without recognition? Um,
Mm.
and even how women's networks like friendships that we were just talking about, sisterhood, chosen family, how does that act as some of that resilience infrastructure?
Mm. I definitely see women quietly carrying community within the school system. Moms do a lot of creating connections, not just within the schools, but within the neighborhood that often go unseen outside of the network of moms. For example, this is anecdotal, of course, but my children's school, there was a swimming a swimming program started by one of the moms because she made a connection to someone else who had a swimming school, and she used that relationship to nurture it, a nurture and foster a relationship with the swimming school to the elementary school, and now that is a residency that the kids get to have. Um, all based on one woman's connection and community that she built. But also the connections that we make within community of other moms, even if it's not a sisterhood just yet, there tends to be a camaraderie and a friendship, or kinship, I should say, of community within the mom network between childcare, transportation, resources based on what other moms may notice you need. I'll give you a quick story, a personal one. When my twins were little, there was a crossing guard at my older child's school who saw me struggling with these twins up and down the hill. We have a long hill to their school, um, because the stroller they had was heavy. So I would leave it sometimes I would take it. And she noticed just me in the struggle. And one day she pulled me aside and she said, "Hey, I see you with these twins. Do you want a umbrella stroller?" For those of you who don't know what an umbrella stroller is, it's a lighter stroller that you can fold quickly and easier. It's you supposed to be able to carry it like an umbrella. The double ones, not so much, but they are a lot lighter than the behemoth double stroller, the expedition double stroller that I had. So she pulled me aside and she said, "Hey, I can get you a stroller because I'm in a group started by a woman in the neighborhood who give things away that they no longer need." And I think I saw a double umbrella stroller on the platform. I said, "Absolutely, I need that umbrella stroller." And one day she just popped up and she said, "Here you go." Because there was a network of moms in the neighborhood that created a community platform online for other moms so they could share resources of, hey, kids grow out of things so quickly. Sometimes things are in great condition. And instead of selling it on eBay, which they all could have, they decided to come together as a neighborhood and create an online community to barter and give things away. Here's a stroller. Here's a car seat. Here are the things that people need when they have kids that my kids have grown out of. Gently used, washed, and we are sharing it. And then the other layer of that is another mom who I would see on the regular and happened to just notice me struggling to navigate with my my two during their terrible two phase. I'm sorry, terrific two phase, and looped me into the network of community support, and was able to just pop up with the stroller, and I was very grateful for that. And whatever I have to donate now, I'm in that community. So if I need to give their car seats away that they're growing out of, I can do that and hopefully pay it forward to other moms in that way. Um, to answer your other question about friendships and how that is resilience infrastructure, aside from the moms being one area, specifically our friendship um, has helped me in building resilience to interpersonal life things that come up, adult life things. I think our friendships not only assist us by helping us become resilient, but they offer support to move towards recovery. So we talked a lot about the nervous system and how important it is to return your nervous system to a sense of safety. And sisterhoods and chosen family, friendships do that. When you feel dysregulated, if you have a group of friends that you can lean on, that friendship is what returns your nervous system to safety. It holds your heart and reminds your heart and soul that it has a soft place to land, that it has safety. The creation of sisterhood not only helps us process emotionally, but offers the support we need to survive and thrive in life. Sisterhood is a community and is really paramount to a community's ability to recover and heal from any traumatic event.
I love those stories, Sybil, and I think, we somehow always in every episode, we always come back to talking about the infrastructure that is people in our communities, right? And I think it's probably also safe to say that, long before recovery plans are written or any resources arrive, things like of that nature, they're the ones that are often stabilizing the emotional center of families, right? And I think Ashley's probably heard me say this or mention it in private conversations about, the impact of women in my life, throughout my childhood and all the way into adulthood. But I don't think we have to lessen the contributions of men to highlight the important work that women do, but I've always viewed women as an anchor in our communities, and that is probably because they have skills as nurturers that us men don't.
Mm,
You know, I love hearing those stories and, some of them I have heard, but packaged within this conversation about resilience, I think, um, you know, in 5 minutes or less, you touched on some of the pillars that I have been a part of writing into national policy just at a different
mm,
level. It's sharing resources that we talk about between communities, whether it be states going through a disaster or down at the community level. It's assessing needs, which there are entire risk frameworks written around assessments, and then communication, which, at various levels, at a community, state, federal, sometimes we get right and sometimes we get wrong, but communicating in a language that actually speaks to people and inspires them to move and take action.
mm.
And you just demonstrated that perfectly of what communities do on their own. And your points about friendship and sisterhood are so well received, not just because we're friends, but also, when someone is going through a crisis or a disaster, long before, like John said, a recovery plan is made, you are going to get those text messages, those calls, those emails from people checking to see if you are good. And sometimes that means so much to people when you have the safety to say no. Um, and get to what you actually need. And sometimes that's a hot meal, sometimes that's a place to stay, sometimes that's prolonged help, and sometimes that's sharing resources. And so I appreciate those so much.
Great points, Ashley. So, Sybil, let's bring this to a personal place. Could you share a woman whose resilience has shaped your life?
Oh wow, yes. So many. Um, aside from, and I'm don't toot my own horn often, but aside from myself, I will throw my Tam in the ring there. Ashley for sure. Her resilience has absolutely shaped my life. We've grown through a lot of things together, but watching her journey has also taught me some things about resilience. And my older sister, for sure. She has, watching her has also shown me some things about resilience. Give or take, like I want to take this that she's done and apply it to my life, or I want to change this. I would tweak it in this way. But actually, I love hosts, and for sure, my sister have both shown me, not just been parts of my community, in my personal support, but their resilience has really shaped my life and how I view what it means to be resilient.
This is so humbling because it really shows just how much relationships matter and how much you carry them on into all of the different phases in your life. So I I had a hunch you might say that, not just as a shout out, but truly I feel the same way about you. And so the points about sisterhood and friendship are so well received. But I do wanna touch on one other area, because obviously we are friends, but do not live in the same, area, and so sometimes resilience comes down to depending on people that you are close to, and not just friends, but neighbors. And I know that we touched on this a little bit earlier, because often in disasters, neighbors are the first responders, long before the sort of institutional things that we know arrive. Um, so I wanna ask you, how do community relationships like neighbors and chosen family that are right around us support your mental resilience during a crisis?
Oh, for sure. I think aside from the practical ways that neighbor and people in close proximity to us help, the practical ways of being, for example, if there's a blizzard coming, your neighbor may check on you. Your neighbor may say, not just during the blizzard, your neighbor may help you prepare. Hey, did you hear there's a blizzard coming? Here in New York, we got two kind of back to back. And though a lot of my neighbors are not, I wouldn't call them friends. We certainly don't like know each other well or hang out. But whenever there's a big storm, the other moms in the building will, hey, did you know about the blizzard coming? The other people in the building will, there's supposed to be a storm. We kind of will have that heads up. Did you know there's a thunderstorm coming? It's supposed to be really bad. Power might go out. Those are some of the ways that the community relationship really help pre uh, eh, disaster, even though, it wasn't too bad of a situation here. But those are some of the ways that community members and community relationships can help before. And a lot of the ways that those relationships can help after to assist in recovery are the same. Hey, are you okay? Not to give too many personal stories, but post the first blizzard, when we had all of the snow, there have been quite a few times where you had to dig out a spot. I don't know how many listeners are from places that got hit really bad with the snow, but Ashley, digging out a spot. John, I don't know how your experience is with snow, but when the snow hits, you have to fight for your spot. You have to shovel that snow to park back in your spot.
John
Um,
knows he just abandoned the North a long time ago.
Right.
fair.
Exactly.
Fair. I'm not mad at that. But there have been times where I've been incredibly frustrated with the long day of fighting through traffic because of the snow, and now have to shovel snow to get just parked so I can go upstairs and recover my nervous system. And it's the community members and my neighbors and the relationships from just saying hi and bye, making small talk of how your day is going. Those are the people who helped me each and every time would see, and they come and um, would assist. If my husband was digging out, they would come help him dig my car out so I could leave in the morning. Help dig my car in if I'm coming back. So it's things like that where making relationships within the community really can help you in recovery, in that you build sort of a camaraderie where it may not be I'm leaning on you to come live in your place, but a helping hand. And that goes so far when you are already at your max. If you are already hitting your limit where you're like, I need to go sit in a quiet room so I can do my box breathing, where I can inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, rinse and repeat. They are the ones who release a little bit of the stress valve when you are really needing it. When it's something is happening afterwards, they may be the ones to say, I have an extra set of batteries. I have an extra flashlight. Do you need anything? A blanket? Do you need, something within reach? And building those relationships is so important because, again, that release is what will help you get to the next part. So, um, when you're at your wits, a neighbor helping you shovel your car out so you can get to work on time will be just enough stress relief for you to access your coping skill for that moment. And then that decreases the stress more. It all is a part of returning that nervous system back to a place that helps you carry on to help you become more resilient.
Oh, those are such great points, Sybil. I think a big part of that too, and I know you kind of already touched on this in your comments, but it's the human brain instinctively looks for connection and reassurance, right, during a crisis or any
Mhm.
adversity. And I think one of the most damaging effects of crisis is feeling alone in it, right? So that is such a profound thing that you just stated there. All right, Sybil. So this has been such a grounding conversation for Ashley and I. Before we wrap, I want to ask you two more things. Promise these are the last two questions. What do you want women or men listening to remember about their resilience? And what do communities need to do, like truly, to support women's well being?
Mm. I want people to remember that their resilience isn't a neglection of their needs. So it's not neglecting, it's not a neglect of what your needs and your feelings are. It's not white knuckling through it. There is a way to be resilient and give yourself a moment. So much about our culture and our society tells you to push through, and that's strength. There is strength and there is resilience in allowing yourself to say, I'm not okay, because that is what gets you through. So, the same way you wouldn't pretend you have all the things necessary in an emergency preparedness kit when you don't. It's almost like having an emotional emergency preparedness kit. That is emotional resilience. Having certain coping mechanisms and saying, I need them. I need to use this because that is resilience. So just remembering not to neglect how you feel, honoring how you feel, that is resilience. And I'd say communities, in order to truly support women's well-being, you have to see women. I think more so now, we as women are more vocal. Everyone is, honestly, because of social media. Everyone has more of a platform to make unseen things more seen. But I think communities need to truly see and truly hear women in what we do, what we tell you our unmet needs are, when we say what our experiences have been like and how that shapes the world, because it is impactful. And if we are truly seeing and hearing women, then we can give the necessary support to our well being.
I agree with that. And as a man, I'm going to take that to heart. I think a lot of us have difficulty listening with intention, and I think one of the most powerful forms of support is just that genuine listening skill. So, thank you for that, Sybil.
Thank you.
I definitely want to thank you for being here today, just sharing your wisdom and telling us about the way that you show up for people, but also how they show up for you. And that goes into our relationship too. I think we've spent a lot of time, and your point was well taken about friendship being a pillar of resilience. And especially this month during Women's History Month, I think women and friendship of women is kind of
Mhm.
at the forefront. And so I really appreciate you sort of being my emotional Wi Fi. Sometimes you're invisible and powerful, and the only reason anything in my life still works. So thank you for being on and just talking and sharing all of your experiences, professional and personal, with us. To everyone listening, resilience isn't built alone. It's built in community, in friendship, and those quiet moments where we choose the healing over that survival mode. So, with that, I think it's a wrap, and we will see you next time on Road to Resilience. Thanks, everyone.